Okay, so let's talk about the main new feature that comes with Creators Kit 2.0. It is the new system of programming by Keyframes that has completely overhauled how Creators Kit works. To start, first off, if you're familiar with keyframing systems through other programs like Adobe Premiere, DaVinci Resolve, Blender, you'll probably be pretty easily familiar with how it's going to work here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by opening up the toolbox. And so you'll note that my setup is going to look a little bit scuffed. Ideally, you do this with two monitors so that you can have the toolbox on one side and your scene on the other side. But since I'm recording here, it's going to be a little bit scuffed. Okay, so we're going to make sure we're in the timeline tab over here, and let's add ourselves a character. Store add, and I'm going to place him here. While I'm at it, I'm also going to use entity hider to hide all distractions. Okay, so here's our character. I'm using my control left click to move him around. And coming back here, you can see that he is in my tree, which you would also find in the manager. So very basic overview of the timeline. So we have our tree over here, which contains all our objects and folders. We have our summary sheet, which will provide a quick summary of all our keyframes. We have our attribute sheet, which contains all the different keyframe types that we're going to modify. We have our controls, including the time, as well as play and skip forward and backward. And we have our different attributes, which refers to the different types of keyframes. Keyframes include all of these. You can scroll here, up and down to see all the different types of keyframes, from movement, animation, orientation, all the way down to different hit splats. So, really basic, let's start with some really basic controls of keyframes. I'm going to add a keyframe. I'm going to drag this over here. And yeah, so if you scroll back and forth, you can see that the scroll bar moves. I'm moving further to the right, now to the left. You can hold Alt and scroll to zoom out and zoom in. You can press play to play the program. You can press pause to pause it. There's also hotkeys of control space to play and pause, control space, control space. Control R to reset back to time 0. Okay, if you're ever confused about all the different types of hotkeys, they will be under the timeline tab here. All right, so let's start off by adding a keyframe. I'm just going to go ahead and add a text keyframe. You'll notice that it will modify keyframes on the currently selected player. Currently selected player is this local player, who I'll call Gnome. The name of the object is also reflected here, as well as in the background here. So I'm going to add a text keyframe. I'm going to say, hello, Gillinor, and I'm going to add it. I'll go through that in a little more detail, but for now, I just want to show you, first off, beautiful little bit of text, how keyframes work. So you can click it to select it. You can drag it around as well to different times. You can box select multiple keyframes. So if I have this keyframe here, I'm gonna hit Control C and I'll Control V to paste over here. I can box select both of these. I can shift to select multiple of them by clicking them individually. What else can I do? I mentioned copying and pasting. Yes, delete. So you can hit delete key to delete all the selected keyframes. And select all. If I were to Control C, Control V, a couple of these here and here, you can hit Control A to select all. You can also use Control Z and Control Y to undo and redo any keyframe actions you've made. So keyframes I've added, I can now Control Z them out of existence. back into existence, and so on and so forth, and Control Y to bring it all back to where I was before. Okay, yeah, that is all our hotkeys, and that's the basic control of our timesheets. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of each of these. You've already seen me copying and pasting keyframes, but let's just start from the beginning. So if I want to add a keyframe, I'm just going to put that back in. Hello, Gillinor. I press the Add Keyframe button over here. That adds a keyframe to the current time for the currently selected object. I currently have gnome selected, and therefore when I pressed that button, it added a text keyframe, because text is currently highlighted, text is currently open, to the time of 0. If I were to go to time 3.5 and type in my name is gnome and add a keyframe here, you can see that it's added at time 3.5. A couple other things, you notice that these backgrounds are being highlighted different colors. When I'm currently on that keyframe, the time is currently on a keyframe, it will highlight yellow. When it's currently off that keyframe, it'll highlight green for the last keyframe. So if we have these two keyframes, one is Hello Gillinor and one is My Name is Gnome, you set the last keyframe, the one at 3.5, is the one that is currently showing. Now if I change this, My Name is Goblin, you can see that changing it will change the color to orange. This means that this keyframe change is not saved until you hit update. So if I were to click away, just watch this text here. See, this text is not updated to My Name is Goblin, it's still My Name is Gnome because I haven't saved it. If I click away, it'll reset. So let's change that back to My Name is Goblin and hit update to update the last keyframe. There we go. Now we go from Hello Gillinor, My Name is Goblin. Other things you can do, you can reset to just set everything back to 0, essentially. You can also, if you are on a keyframe, clicking the same button can also delete it. I usually just highlight it and delete it though. I find that to be easier. I'll just Control Z to undo that. Okay, so that is all the basic keyframe functions. Let's get into the different keyframe types. So if I scroll up on this little menu here, I can find all the different keyframe types. Also, I can do so by going anywhere else and holding Shift scroll. Sorry. Shift scroll to scroll through the different keyframe types. If I want to scroll through the different objects that I have, for example, if I have a bunch of objects like so, just as I would over here, I can just scroll through them and you can see it will scroll appropriately and change the selected object as it changes the highlight over here. Let's just remove all that excess material. Okay. Yes, let's dive into all the individual keyframes. So we've already been talking about text keyframes. I'm going to go back to select Gnome. There you go, his keyframes have popped up again. Text keyframes, really simple. You enter in a text that you want to play overhead of your character, and you set a duration. Durations in Creator's Kit are in ticks. So this is 1 tick, 2 tick. You can also move things to 1 decimal place of a tick. So 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4 of a tick. Duration by default for text is 5 ticks. That is how it normally plays in game, and it will last that long. If I hit Control Space to play the program, as soon as 5 is done, 5 ticks have passed, the text disappears. Again, Control R to reset, Control Space to play again, and just watch the text up here. 5 ticks have now passed, and the text disappears. That's text keyframes. Let's go to overhead keyframes. I'm doing all the 2D stuff, the text and overheads first, because that's the easiest stuff to understand in terms of Creator's Kit. We'll get to the more complex 3D transformations later. So, overheads. This includes skulls and prayers. This is going to be really simple. You can choose which skull you want, add keyframe. Look at that. It's this appropriate skull. If you want to turn it off, just hit none and add another keyframe. Prayers, same deal. Let's do protect all. Beautiful. And let's now have a skull and a prayer. And now let's turn them both off. Add another keyframe. Control R to reset. Control space to play. There we go. Control R to reset again. That's all there is to overheads. As you can see, there's a ton of different types of overheads that you can use, tons of different types of skulls you could use. All of that's available. Health keyframes. I'm just going to delete some of this because it's going to clutter everything. So health is the health bar above your head. This is pretty straightforward as well. You set a duration like you do with text. Again, by default, it's after you are attacked for 5 ticks and no one else is attacking you, your health bar disappears. That's normally how it plays in game, so that's the default value here. I don't have any other sprites available right now, but we can probably add those later. You set the max health and the current health for your object. So the bar that shows is the current health divided by the max health. Anything remaining is going to be red bar. So currently, if I'm going to use the defaults of 99 max health, 99 current health, and I hit add keyframe, it will add a full green bar. If, say, at tick 3, I am hit with a lot of damage and go down to 49 health, I can add another keyframe. As you can see, it's about 50% remaining. I'm going to delete that and also delete the health because let's talk about hitsplats. So as you can see, there's 4 different types of Hitsplat keyframes. This is important because each hitsplat represents a different position. If I were to show you position 1, it's going to be on the bottom. Position 2, actually, let's just very clearly label, update that. Position 1 is on the bottom. Position 2 is on the top. Position 3 is on the left. And position 4 is on the right. These are the different positions for each hitsplat. Now I'm just going to delete these extra ones and go back over here. So again, you can set duration. By default, it'll display as -1, which is actually a decimal value, 5/3. I don't normally let you set decimal values because it's not very useful information. And for the most part, you're not going to be using any duration outside of 5/3 ticks. Different sprites, tons of different sprites. You can do whatever you want, and you can set the variant, whether it's a normal damage sprite, a max hit damage sprite, or someone else has been hit, or a hit that is not attributable to you, so it's a bit faded out. I'll just hit update. You can see it is now 1 damage. Let's change that to 20 damage, update that, and let's change the sprite to poison, update that, and let's change it to someone else is being poisoned, or another monster is being poisoned, but the source isn't you. There you go, it's darker. Similarly, let's go damage max. There we go, max hit splat. So again, pretty straightforward stuff. Not everything is going to have all these different variants. If it doesn't have it, like corruption's not going to have a max hit, I don't think. And therefore it'll just display the normal one, the normal variant. Okay, let's do something a little bit more standard. Update that. So let's say a quick keyframe hitsplat health is a bit of a complicated procedure that's ultimately very straightforward. Essentially what it does is it takes the damage that you input here and it says, okay, I'm going to create a new health keyframe that takes that damage into account. So by default, if our max health is 99 and I quick keyframe hitsplat and health, it'll give me a health keyframe that is max health 99 with 20 damage applied. So my current health is now 79. You can see that's reflected in the bar over here and in the hitsplat here. If I go and add a hitsplat 2 and I want there to be now 10 damage of venom, I can quick keyframe Hitsplat health again, and what it's going to do is it's going to take my current health and decrease it by another 10. There you go. You can see that health is decreased. A new health keyframe has been added, which is now down to 69 health, up from what was 99 to 79 to 69. And once more, we're going to add a third Hitsplat. It's going to be disease for 50 health. And we're going to quick keyframe the Hitsplat 3 as well as a health keyframe by pressing this button. 50 damage of disease, and look at how low our health is now. Other quick thing you can do is you can also duplicate a Hitsplat keyframe to another Hitsplat keyframe. So essentially, if you want to move this keyframe down to Hitsplat 4, I could duplicate Hitsplat 3 to 4, and if I'll just delete this Hitsplat 3, and there we go. Now it's in position 4. Okay, let's get rid of some of this because we're now going to talk about the most complex part of the plugin, which is the 3D transformation options, which are movement, animation, and orientation. So, movement is, let's just start by adding a movement keyframe. There's two ways you can do this. One is by the traditional way, just clicking this button over here. The other way, well, there's 3 ways I should really say. Another way you can do it is if you're currently clicked into the scene, you can shift right click to keyframe the currently selected object, whatever keyframe you want to give it. The third way is you start adding steps, but we'll get to that in a second. So I'm just going to add a movement keyframe as I would normally. See, my character disappears because I currently have no movement set, no position set. Just going to move that back to time 0. Now, there's a couple different hotkeys that you can use to create steps for your character to walk as part of this keyframe. The hotkey you'll need is Control A. So point at a tile, you can see my preview right there, and hit Control A. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is enable my debug overlay with page down and make sure, first off, I don't want all these NPCs being rendered. That's just too busy. I'll keep my player rendered, but I'll move him over here. Page up to get into Oculus Orb mode. And I want to make sure that object path overlay is checked on. And if I hit Control A again to point to a tile where I want my character to move to, you can see a path is created. So I started by hitting Control A over here and then Control A over here to add a path between these different steps. Other hotkeys we're going to need is Control X to delete the latest step that I've made. If I hit Control X, Control X, Control X, Control X, you can see all of the steps that I've added are now removed. And I'm going to start hitting Control A again to replace those steps. I'm going to get rid of this text keyframe because it's really distracting. Perfect. The other hotkey you want is Control C to clear the entire path. Control C, all of those steps are now gone. You're starting fresh. You'll notice as I'm adding these steps, if you look down at my movement keyframe, you can see it continuing to grow. Keep adding some more steps. Because my character is moving at walk speed, speed of 1, I have added 15 steps, and therefore my character is going to be moving for 15 ticks. So if I hit play or Control Space, my character is going to go through that movement path. And at the end, he will simply stop and not move anymore. I'm going to hit Control R to reset. Okay, I'm going to hit Control C to clear that path. Once again, Control A is your friend. That's going to help you create these different steps. And Control C once again. That is the very basics of movement. There's a couple modifiers you can use as indicated over here. So if I add this path, I'm going to move 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, so 4 ticks. And I'm going to change my speed to 2, which is run speed. Update that. As you can see, now I only require 2 ticks to run through that course, and my character is moving much faster. You can also modify the turn rate. So if I go back to speed 1 to very clearly illustrate this, Control C to clear. I'm going to do a couple of different turns. Control A to add those steps. And I will make my movement speed really, really quick. Update that. Control space. Instant. This guy is just rotating like a madman. Control R to reset. I'm just going to reset that and update so that I'm back to normal turn rate. Okay, so that's creating a single movement path. And I'm going to create a smaller movement path to just very clearly illustrate what's about to happen. Now, what if I want my character to move, stop, and then move again? Well, if I keep hitting Control A, I'm going to keep adding steps to this current keyframe because this is the last keyframe according to this time. If I want to add a new keyframe, a new path to walk, I need to add a new keyframe. I'm going to hit Add Keyframe over here, Control A to start where I was before, and let's have him loop around. So if I hit play, he should loop around like so. Control R to reset. So if I read this path correctly, he's going to move forward 2 spaces for 2 ticks, stop for 1 tick, then move another 3 steps over 3 ticks. Move, stop, move. Control R to reset. Now, something that's going to be very convenient for you, if I were to recreate the second path, the second keyframe, except delete this, I can go Control right click to add a movement keyframe, and it'll automatically add the first keyframe, or the first step to that keyframe where my character is currently located. This is going to be very useful for chaining different steps in a row. So if I move over here, I want him to pause 1 tick and then add a new keyframe so I can add a new path. Right click, Control right click, add movement, and have him move around again. Let's get to the end of that path, wait a tick. We'll wait 2 ticks just for the fun of it. Control right click, add movement, add another path. So if I hit Control R to reset, Control space to play, move, stops for a tick, moves again, stops for a tick, moves again, stops for 2 ticks, moves again, and end. Okay, Control R, I'm going to delete these movement keyframes. I no longer want those around. That is the basics of movement. Now, something that's you may have noticed is that my character's animation has been very plain, very boring. If I have him walk around a little bit more, it looks essentially like he's gliding. He's not really animating properly because we haven't given him any animations. So why don't we go ahead and do that? You can see that he's currently looping the animation that I have set here, but if I create some animation keyframes, I can make his movement look a lot better, and I can make him perform a bunch of different actions in sequence. So let's get started. First thing to note is let's distinguish active animations from pose animations. And to do so, I'm going to duplicate this guy, put his copy over here. I'm going to give him a dance emote. So pose animations are any animation that plays when you are standing idly, when you are walking, and when you are running. And for that matter, any time during any of those 3 where you're rotating. Active animations are everything else. They are your emotes, they are casting spells, they are climbing agility obstacles, making attacks against another creature or another player if you're a horrible monster. these are all active animations. Pose animations again, that's your standing, walking, running, turning. Active animations are everything else. So when I walk through this path, I'm just going to delete this guy. When I walk through this path, I want him to be playing different pose animations because he is moving through this course. The programming system is quite smart in that you can set a bunch of different pose animations and your character will play those as he is moving around or standing still. As you can see, it's all -1 because it's currently unset. You can enter different ones manually if you know all their IDs, which I don't, or you can use different presets. So the simplest one to use is the unarmed preset. This is essentially, what does your character look like when they are moving around while unarmed? As you can see, autofills with a bunch of different animations, and I will add that animation keyframe. Now you can see he's struck a bit of a pose, and when we hit play, Control Space, he is going to walk through that course and play different animations of rotating, turning, walking, and if we want, we can even make him run through the course. Update that, Control R to reset, Control Space to play. Beautiful. Let me just bring that back to ground, and those are your pose animations. So a lot of the time you're just going to want to use your basic unarmed animations, very easy to use. For players, you may also have different a different set of animations depending on the weapon that you're holding. A really good example I like to use is the barrel chest anchor because it's very distinct. So if I go barrel chest anchor, find my player, I'm going to store his model and set this guy to that model. If he walks around like this, that doesn't quite look right. That does not look like a barrel chest man, because what it should look like is something closer to this. Hide that. Oh dear. So that was a big mistake. I accidentally disabled my plugin and destroyed everything. But let's give that another go. Okay. Let's disable or enable entity hider. Get rid of my guy. And let's go back to our animations. So as I was mentioning, the barrel chest anchor has very specific animations that you want to play. So you can always find that item under weapon presets. I'm going to find barrel chest anchor, double click it, and it will find all those pose animations for you. I will add that animation keyframe, and now when he walks through this course, he should look like he is walking around with a barrel chest anchor instead of a bronze dagger. Pretty neat, huh? Okay. You'll note that not every weapon is perfectly set up. I'm sure there's weapons that I've missed because I have to create this list manually, unfortunately, but that is simply how life goes. Okay, now what if I were Jad? Let's find Jad. Actually, what I'm gonna do, I think a goblin. Goblins are probably gonna be a little bit easier. I'm going to store his model, fix that animation now. You can find NPC preset animations as well. So if I find that goblin by spelling it correctly, double click that, it will autofill all that goblin's pose animations. Now when he walks around, he should look very, very cool. Control R to reset. Okay. Yes. Let's move on from pose animations to active animations. I'm going to bring me back to this guy over here. Update that. Let's get the Let's get the barrel chest version. Yeah. Let's do that. Update that. Okay. Active animations, again, are attacks, spells, emotes. Anytime you're really doing something, you're doing something interesting. Yeah, so what if I have a bit of a shorter path? I'm just going to hit Control X to delete some of these, and let's create an innocent little goblin. And let's give this goblin some goblin animations. And move him right over there. Let's say at the end of my path, I want to add an attack. I'm going to move to tick 2 over here, and I want to give him an active animation. I could give him a dance animation if I wanted, if you just wanted to flex on this goblin, and hit add keyframe. The thing about these active animations is they only typically play once, whereas pose animations will loop themselves, unless you loop the active animation. But essentially what we're doing, if I hit Control R, Control space to play, walks, at the end, he dances. Or let's say I want to change it so that he does a barrel chest anchor attack. I can find brain anchor attack and update that. Move back over here, Control space to play. He should do an attack. Beautiful. Okay, so there we go. That's active animations. You can search here for all different types of animations. If I wanted a God Sword special, I could find one here. The God Sword special attack, sure. Oh, I think this is supposed to be the dog sword from Leagues. Yeah, pretty fun animation that they stitched together all the God Sword animations for that. Okay, now what if I wanted to stop on a certain frame? Or first off, let's change this to a spin animation. I know its spin is 2107, so he should spin. Now, what if I wanted him to start this frame right here? I wanted to start him T-posing. Well, I could change the first frame to, I'll have to guess a little bit, but let's say frame 6. So that his first frame, let's change it a little bit more. There we go. Now, once tick 2 hits, his first frame is going to be that T-pose, and then he'll finish the rest of the animation. If I want to make that even more distinct, let's get him further along through the T-pose. If I want to make that even more distinct, we can move it even further along. There we go. Hardly much of an animation left when you're starting at frame 12, at least with spinning. The other thing, let's say I wanted to freeze at that pose. I would just hit Enable Freeze, and instead of moving, he should, well, he should ideally stop at that. It's always a bit of a gamble as to whether I program this correctly, let's be honest. So if I well, what can I say? It must be ever so slightly broken. Okay, that will have to be fixed. But the idea is it should freeze on that single frame. That's the ideal. Okay, that is going to be animations. Let's talk about, well, just to make it fun, let's sequence a couple animations and a couple movements together. So I liked that attack. Anchor, attack, update that, and then over here we're going to make him emote, laugh, and then after another 2 ticks he can emote blow kiss. Oops, I accidentally updated that last animation. I'm going to Control Z that. Emote blow kiss, add a new keyframe. So I'll hit Control R to reset, Control Space to play, attacks. Oh, doesn't have enough time to attack. Oh, you better correct that. Attacks. Something funky's going on with these animations because I've frozen them. So now the freeze is working. Oh, you know, I'm something special. I'm gonna be honest. All right, attacks, laughs, and blows a kiss. As it should work. All right, so that's going to be animations. Now, let's move on to orientation. One thing that you're going to want to do every once in a while is actually have your character turn around. Orientation is most relevant when you're doing stationary turns. So you've walked through this little course, you've stopped, you've attacked, and now you've played this animation. Sure, let's let that animation finish. And now you want to turn around and start walking in the opposite direction. Well, movement keyframes are only so smart in that if I Control right click to add a movement keyframe and have him move backwards, you'll see that he stops, plays his animation, and instantly snaps to the other direction. Doesn't look great. So when you want to turn your character around while they're not moving, you need to add an orientation keyframe. Orientation is, or rotation, essentially you set a start, what direction you want to start by pointing, and what direction you want to end at pointing. And these are all in jagex units. So as you can see, there's a little compass here. 0 jagex units is 0 degrees facing south. 1024 jagex units is 180 degrees or facing north, and 360 would be 2048 jagex units. So if I want him to hit this goblin and then turn from south to north, I need to start by entering south here, which is 0, and enter north, the direction I want to eventually point, 1024. I'm going to calculate how long that takes, and I'll get into why in a second. You can also set how fast he rotates, which generally you may worry about it here and there, but not super often. So let's just add that keyframe and watch what happens. As you can see, a little duration tail is shown here. And if I go back to tick 0, he's going to walk, he's going to do his animation, spin around, and go north. And just to give him a little extra breathing room, let's try that again. Animation, turns around, walks north. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what's going on under the hood. Duration is how long that orientation will be held for. How long will the character orient towards 1024 degrees, or how long they will attempt to point north. In this scenario, he will attempt to point north for 1.1 ticks. As soon as that 1.1 ticks is over, he's going to listen to the next movement keyframe as to what direction to point in. However, when a movement keyframe and a duration keyframe are competing, an orientation keyframe are competing, the orientation keyframe will always win out. So let's recreate this a little bit. Delete this movement keyframe. Move this orientation keyframe away for now. Let's add another movement where he's going to be turning around a bunch. As you can see, there's our path. This is what it's going to look like. The movement keyframe system is relatively smart in that it figures out what direction your character should be pointing in based on where he is walking. But if we add this orientation keyframe where he is starting to point south and then points north, he will hold that position for 1.1 ticks regardless of what direction he's moving in. So if I change this to 5 ticks, update that, for the entirety of this movement, he will attempt to point south, or point north at 1024 degrees. So let's back up a little bit. He's playing his animation to attack. He's now pointing north, and he will continue to point north until those 5 ticks are over. Okay. So orientation keyframes are most useful when you're stationary, but they are also useful if you're trying to maintain an orientation while moving. Now, what's the calculate button do? Calculate button will take your start orientation and your end orientation and your turn rate and determine how long it takes to go from start to end. So at a turn speed of 32, it takes if I calculate, it takes 1.1 ticks to go from south to north. And if we watch my character, you can see it exactly as 5.5 hits, he has finished that rotation. That's why I always recommend calculating to get an exact duration of how long that orientation should be held for. Okay, I know that's probably quite a bit, so let's just do that one more time, except maybe instead we'll be pointing east. So I'm going to delete this orientation keyframe, and I'm going to, what I'm going to do, here's a good idea. Delete that movement as well. We're going to give him a moment to play that animation, and then we are going to get him to point north, and then we're going to get him to point south again and move. So how we're going to do this is I'm going to control right click. Let's just add an orientation keyframe this way. I'm going to I want him to start pointing south because that's the direction he was moving, and I want him to eventually point east, which is 1536. 1536, calculate, and turn rate should be set to 32. It's a little bit of a bug that it was set to -1. Let's not forget to fix that. Calculate that again. It should only be taking 0.5 ticks to do that. Okay, so he is playing his animation, finishes up, turns east, and then in another tick, let's make him turn north, and then we're going to make him walk north. So what I can do is my start orientation should be east. I'm going to just hit grab, and that's going to grab the direction he's currently pointing. There we go, which is east, 15, should be 1536. Something funky's going on. And I want him to end by pointing north, 1024. Add keyframe. And let's just make sure that's at tick 7 because I like it to be a little bit clean. So he points east, then points north, and then we'll make him walk again. So we'll control right click to add a new movement keyframe to add a new path and make him walk. So plays his animation, points east, points north, starts walking. Okay. The last way, and I think it's the most efficient way to add orientation keyframes. Let's go through that right now. I'm going to delete these. What you can do is you can use some hotkeys. So if I don't have an orientation keyframe set, I can use control open bracket to add a keyframe with a start orientation of where I am currently pointing. So if I want him to start by pointing south, I'm going to point my mouse south of him to a tile south of him and go control open bracket. You can see that it adds an orientation keyframe where my start is south. And now if I want to change this keyframe so that he's ending in a different direction, I can use control open or control closed bracket to select an end orientation where I am pointing. If I want him to end up pointing north, control closed bracket, it'll automatically modify that orientation keyframe and update its duration. So he is currently doing his animation and rotating north, and then walking. So once again, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change it up slightly where he's going to go west. So I'm going to control, right click, add movement, make him move west. And what he will do, we're going to, so now this orientation keyframe is no longer correct. I want him to end up pointing west, not north. I'm going to use those same hotkeys to modify the last keyframe here. So control open bracket, so he's starting by pointing south. Control closed bracket to make sure he ends up pointing east. And you can see that the new duration is automatically calculated. The direction is now pointing west. Sorry, I'm mixing up my east and west. So hit play on that, does his animation, points west, starts walking. Okay, so that's probably a fair amount to do with orientation. Unfortunately, it is sort of a confusing process, but I think with a bit of practice you can get used to it. One other thing I wanted to show you just while I was at it, it came to mind with movement keyframes. Sometimes, let's delete this over here. Sometimes you may want to move, oh, that works perfectly fine. For example, the movement system is pretty smart in that it'll avoid obstacles. But what if you want to go through an obstacle? Like what if you're playing a ghost or playing a bird that can fly over a fence? Well, you can change the algorithm which you use by going to the Creators Kit config and finding path algorithm. You can choose waterborne for moving on water so that your character only goes on water tiles, or you can choose ghost to essentially ignore all barriers, all walls, all fences. So if I hit Control C to clear that, Control A, he will now move through the fence. Let's just delete that and set that back up. And bring that path algorithm back to normal. Okay, so again, those are your big three: movement, animation, orientation. Very big, very complicated. However, there's a lot simpler stuff remaining for us. Let's do a bit of spawning and then we'll do models afterwards. So let's say I want to, let me set up a, oh, I have a fantastic idea. Let's, first I'll name this goblin over here, move him over here. I want him to get hit. Let's get a Hitsplat keyframe in there. We're going to make it so that he is hit for a 10. Oh, nope, I wanted it to be damage. And the health keyframe, he only has 10 health, so max health 10, current health 0. Update that. And after he is hit, after 2 ticks, I want him to play a death animation and then despawn. So let's add an animation oh my goodness, an animation keyframe. Goblin, it'd be like goblin death. Goblin. Lots of Dorgish. 100 goblin. Goblin. Oh, goblin death. Ooh, I hope this is a good model for this. Nope, this would be an old goblin animation. We don't want that. This will be the reworked goblin around 2006 or so. Slice surface goblin death. Sure, let's just give it a shot. Oh, that's beautiful. Okay, perfect. The animation ends at about tick 9 over here. So at this point, I want him to despawn. So I'm going to go over spawn, disable, and we just have to make sure now he has a point at which he is enabled. So I'll add an enable spawn keyframe over here. So if we play that, he's hit for 10 damage, death animation, and he is despawned. Pretty straightforward. Now, what if I wanted to change things up a little bit? where suddenly he poofs back into existence as, let's change that animation back to his idle. Get him back in action, except he's different. He is now a different goblin model. Well, we can use model keyframes to do that. So first off, let me make sure he is set to his current model. I'm just going to grab his current model and move that to keyframe 0. And then let's give him a new model. Let's find another goblin model. Sure, this one, store. And it will be over here. There we go. Pops back into existence as an entirely new goblin. He's hit, death animation, disappears, new man. Another good thing to note while I'm at it is when you use the cache searcher, you can also store, add, animate versus just storing and adding an object. So if I store and add an object, I'll find that new goblin over here, whereas I can store, add, and animate, which will automatically add an animation keyframe to that object with the appropriate pose animations. Just a little tidbit I thought I probably should let you know about. Okay, get rid of those. Go back to our goblin. Yeah, that's his model change. With model as well, you can also change it so that it doesn't use custom models, it just uses a model ID. You can also change the radius as well, as shown in the initial basics tutorial. But we don't need to go through that. Okay. Last keyframe types, let's go through spot anims. So spot anims or spot animations are essentially graphical effects that play on your player. These could be spell effects if you're casting a spell or if you're hit by a spell. For example, Vengeance or Ice Barrage. Certain emotes will also have different spot animations. You know, if you're hit during thieving, you have those little birds floating around your head. That's also spot animation. Think of it as little extra graphical flares on your player. So we can add those as well. We can find different spot animations using the searcher here. If I type in Vengeance, I will do double click this one over here. It will give me the ID and I can add keyframe. Let's just add it over here while he's turning. So that when we play, he gets this spot animation that will stick with him as he's moving. Let's move it to keyframe 0 just to better represent that. Huh. There we go. Now, something to note is you can have two different spot animations at a time. So for example, if I were to choose, what do I want to do? Spell, let's go Ice Barrage Impact 2. There we go. He's now impacted by a very large Ice Barrage. Don't know why it's so big. Let's do... There we go. Now he has two spot animations at a time. You'll also note that height is a parameter that I cannot manually control. A little bit annoying, or I can't automate. You have to set the height yourself of how high up vertically the spot animation should play. As you can see, this Ice Barrage is not quite correct. Heights will typically be 0, 92, or 128 on players, but that can vary. I hope at some point to be able to automate it so that you don't have to think about that anymore, but for now, this is just unfortunately the way it's going to be. Okay, that's spot animations, and similar to hit spots, you can also duplicate the spot animation to the other category. So if I want him to have two Ice Barrage spot animations, I will just duplicate spot anim 2 to spot anim 1. you might not even be able to see two ice barrages if they're identical. But hey, there they are. There's technically two of them. There you go. Okay. Those are going to be spot animation keyframes. So now at this point, I want to move to a little demonstration of putting everything together and creating a bit more of a complex scene. So I'm going to start fresh. And let's find ourselves some fun characters. Let's grab, I want the sandwich lady. I'm going to grab her. We'll store add and animate to add an animation keyframe. No, I want her to be without her little baguette tray, which is probably the really colorful object. I will be using the model anvil in this demonstration here, which is technically the next tutorial, but this is just a good way to put everything together. Okay, so let's remove that sandwich tray, forge and set. Oh my, that removed a lot from her. In fact, that removed everything from her. Yeah, that won't do. Let's find out which are the legs, and we will add our own set. Does that look like legs to you? Nope, nope, nope. They should be pink. Ah, these are the legs. 14421, 14421. Okay, and let's add some items to her. Sandwich. Let's add the player items to her. We want to make sure they're not the ground items, like the ones that you would drop on the ground. We want to make sure that they're the female worn items because she happens to be female. Add anvil, add anvil, add anvil. Forge and set. There we go. And the lighting is off. So let's just put actor lighting. Okay, beautiful. I'm just going to get rid of all those extra models I created because I don't want them anymore. And we may have to do this manually. We'll call this sandwich lady. Let's call it sandwich lady. Get rid of that. Okay. Let's make her, what's her idol? No, I want her idol to actually be animations. Let's just give her basic player unarmed animations. Update that. Oh, and she's got her baguette. I don't even know where she got that from. That's fascinating. Okay, but she's got to cook with that baguette, which is very convenient. Let's add ourselves a range. Oh, I bet there's a range right over here. Going to store add to this range. Place it down right here. I get a bit of clipping with that nearby tile, so let's set the radius. Beautiful. Okay, she's going to be here. Oh, but that radius is now going to clip with her. So maybe we can, do you want a smaller range maybe? Or we can just set her radius a little bit higher. Sure, we can do that. Beautiful. Okay. Now I want her to be cooking a little bit. She's going to be cooking up a storm because she's going to come and she's going to help feed you because you are out there in the wild and starving. So let's find a cooking animation. Human cooking, that sounds pretty appropriate. Double click that, update. We'll loop that a couple of times, update that. Let's see. Okay. There we go. Now as she's cooking, what I want to do, so once she finishes her first animation, I'm just going to have an item spawn. I'm going to make it so it looks like she just baked a cake and dropped it to the ground, as civilized people do. So let's find cake. Sure, make sure it's the ground item. We're going to store and add. Beautiful. And we're going to give it a spawn animation, or a spawn keyframe. It's going to start despawned, and then at the end of that animation, wait a second, loops, about 4.5, it should spawn. Let's see that. Boom, beautiful. So another good thing to note is, we'll talk about it later. And okay, let's give her another second to cook something else, and she will spawn a triangle sandwich. Let's do triangle sandwich, ground item, store and add. Let's place it right over here. And I'm just going to take these keyframes, copy and paste them. So move this to about 8.9. So if we play that, she cooks, spawns a cake, cooks, spawns a triangle sandwich, and at that point, I think she's probably done her business. She doesn't need to be playing an animation anymore. And she's going to take a tick to pick up this cake, which let's give her an animation for that as well. What might it be called? Human pickup floor. I like the sounds of that. Nice. So as she picks up the cake, we want the cake to despawn again. I'll just Control-C, Control-V that spawn keyframe. And now, once she finishes that animation, I'm going to make her rotate to the right and move in the same tick. So let's add an orientation keyframe. I'm going to use the hotkeys, so I want to set the start of her orientation, Control open bracket over here, and the end, Control closed bracket over in this direction. So that when I hit play, she'll rotate in that direction. And I also want to add a movement keyframe that she walks over there in the same tick. So let's watch that happen. She picks up the item. Let's give her just a little bit of breathing room. Picks up the item, moves, and we'll make her pick up the next item. We'll just copy and paste, and once she's bending down, we'll make the triangle sandwich disappear. Okay, let's play that from the start. And just for cleanliness sake, let's hit page down to remove our overlay, Control R to reset, Control space to play. Cooks a cake, which spawns, cooks a triangle sandwich, which spawns, picks it up, turns and moves, picks it up, and then what next? She's going to take a second, and then she's going to find a traveling adventurer. No. Before even that, we are going to make her change models into the regular sandwich lady model. So first, I'm just going to make sure that she's using this model by adding a keyframe, a model keyframe with that model. And then I want to, what do you think this model is going to look like? Well, we'll give it a shot. It's nothing special at all. Okay. And then I want her to transform into the sandwich lady, the fully powered sandwich lady, the ultimate sandwich lady. Except we're gonna give her, oh no, I applied that to the triangle sandwich. I don't think I wanted to do that. Always make sure you know what you're selecting. genius. And just make sure she is this sandwich lady. And then once, okay, I think that's working. Okay, so cooks, spawns again, picks it up, moves over, picks it up, transforms into the full, the fully prepped, the fully armed sandwich lady, and then she's going to find the nearest adventurer to harass. So back in my day, I don't know, most of you probably aren't old enough to remember, but the sandwich lady was really dangerous, especially when you were young and you didn't really get all the names of all these different things. Like, I don't know what a, baguette is, or I don't know what, some of these pastries mean. I don't even know what they look like. Like, are pies supposed to look like that? What is a bread roll a baguette? She was really quite dangerous. And back in the day, if you failed a random event, they would do something nasty to you. The sandwich lady in particular would hit you with the baguette, and you would be teleported off to the middle of nowhere. It was a very harrowing experience. Anyways, the animation, let's just give her back her NPC animations. Sandwich lady. And once she's transformed, there we go. Okay, and then we'll make her walk. We'll make her walk over here. And in the meantime, let's get an innocent-looking player. Yes, Mr. Blackbeard. Going to, let's store add Mr. Blackbeard. He's going to, nice. Okay, he is going to be walking along. Where he will meet Control A, where he'll meet up with the sandwich lady. Now this is a great time to talk about the summary sheet. So, as you can see, I've been adding a bunch of keyframes. If you look at the sandwich lady keyframes, you'll see a couple of them are reflected up here. The summary sheet is essentially so that you can properly time things. I want Blackbeard, which is going to be this guy right here, which I will name Blackbeard. I want Blackbeard and Sandwich Lady to meet up at the same time. As you can see, their keyframes are reflected up here in summary. So only a few keyframes are noted. I can see that this movement keyframe, indicated by M, is being represented. So I'm just going to slide this back so that they stop at the same time. You'll also see that animation and orientation keyframes of the sandwich lady are represented up here. I can change which keyframes are currently showing because only three different types can show. This is currently showing movement, animation, orientation. I could change it so that it's showing model, animation, orientation, model, spawn and orientation, so on and so forth. This might be useful, for example, during the time, so long ago when I was changing the spawn status of some of these different elements. Cake spawn, triangle sandwich spawn, so you can see exactly when these things are occurring. So just a little tidbit when you're dealing with much more complex programs, a lot of moving pieces, that shaking up your summary sheet can really help indicate when timings are appropriate. Okay, so now I've lined up the Sandwich Lady's movement with Blackbeard's movement so that they should both stop walking at the same tick, and I've already lined it up such that they should appear together. Oh, Blackbeard should have some animations, shouldn't he? Blackbeard, let's give you some basic unarmed animations. And we'll just move this back to tick 0. So that should look a little bit more natural. Sandwich Lady's over here, she's doing her thing. Moving along, they meet each other in the middle, and let's have Sandwich Lady over here. I'm going to make her give a little bit of a pleasant wave. Ooh, I wonder how that's going to work actually with her model, because this tray model is quite different. So let's we'll give it a shot. Emote wave. What's that going to look like? Her baguette appears. Not the greatest look. Let's give her. Let's just give her a bit of text. Hello there, sir. And we'll give it 5 ticks to play. Would you like a... this is... Yeah, let's try and be efficient with our dialogue. Want a baguette on me? And we're going to, instead of orientation, we're going to show text. So we can see when to time Blackbeard's text. Not interested. Blackbeard, he was never a very pleasant guy. Okay. Not interested. And let's give him a couple of ticks to spill out those words before he's going to start moving away, because he's a bit rude. We're going to make him walk around the Sandwich Lady. So I'm going to add an orientation keyframe. I'm going to hit Control open bracket, so he starts pointing. Has to show you this. He starts pointing east, and then he points south. And we'll make sure that this doesn't bug out as he starts to walk. Add movement. He's going to keep going about his business. Not interested, starts moving, and at the same time as he starts moving, I want the Sandwich Lady to turn around. Let's Control right click, add an orientation keyframe, Control open bracket to start here, Control closed bracket to end over here. Again, this turn rate business is a little bit bugged. That will be fixed for release. Turns around. Let's make it sure she completely turns around, maybe. Yeah. And then, as we're moving along, how about she gives a little... Oh no, you don't. And he's going to stop in his tracks. Let's just Control X some of these keyframes, some of these movement steps out. Oh no, you don't. And he's going to turn around. Control right click. Let's add another orientation. Make sure that's properly set. He's going to Control open bracket to start this way, Control close bracket to end over here. And someone's really not having a good time with this turn right here. Okay, turns around, but as he's turning around, Sandwich Lady's already got a plan. She's going to, we're going to add another movement keyframe, and she is going to run. We're going to make her run over here. And at the end of this run, she's going to orient towards him. So let's add another orientation keyframe. And Control close bracket to point towards him. As she transforms back to her other model, her baguette wielding dangerous model. And just give her unarmed animations again. Okay, so let's just walk that back, make sure we're doing everything correctly. Okay. Hi, walks together, exchange a bit of dialogue. He's kind of rude. Starts walking away, she's turning around. She's upset. She is upset. Let's just move that animation change a little bit back here, as well as the model change, because I think that will look a bit better as we go into a full assault mode. Oh, I want him to be pointing towards her. Let's just quickly change this orientation keyframe so that he's pointing north. Calculate that. And I want that to be slightly delayed so that he's a little bit behind her, just as she makes a deadly blow. But as she's running, she's casting, I hate to use it again, but she's casting vengeance. Yeah, that's right. She's casting vengeance, and she flicks on an overhead prayer. Soul split. Beautiful. All right. She gets angry, turns on soul split, casts vengeance, and let's just scroll up to see her animations. As she ends here, we want her to play some sort of attack animation. Let's do, what's the Elder Maul? I love this special attack. It is a really good looking spec. I think it is, maybe it's this one. We will add a keyframe. Boom. Oh my goodness. What a fantastic animation. They really outdid themselves. Okay. Gets angry. Huge attack. And as that lands, he's going to have to take a pretty big hit. He's going to be taking a hit of, yes, damage, which is going to be max. It's going to be everything he's got. Beautiful. Using that button, I've also automatically added a health keyframe. He is completely red barred, and he's going to say, oh. At that point, you know, what else can you say? You've just been taken out by the sandwich lady. After which, he's got to play a death animation. So let's give him, it's called Human Death. Human Death, planks. Sorry, does that timing feel right? Yes, that does. Planks for a second, after which he despawns. And if we're despawning him, we have to make sure at some point he was spawned to begin with. So we'll just go back here and add a spawn keyframe. Okay, let's take a look at what that looks like in full. Oh, ooh, that's a bit of clipping there. So when I set this model for the sandwich lady, I need to make sure that the radius is set properly down here, not just up here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, update that. Perfect. Sandwich lady's cooking, cooks a lovely little cake, cooks a triangle sandwich. There's a little bit of a, let me see that again. No, I need to set one more time. That animation plays a tick too late. Cooks, Spawn, spawn. There we go. Picks it up, walks over, picks it up, turns into dangerous sandwich lady. Offering over to Blackbeard over here. Would you like a baguette? Not interested. Starts walking around her, and she's like, nah, ain't gonna happen. Smashes him. Absolutely destroyed. Disappeared. Wow. I think we used all the different keyframe types with that little scene right there. And if we really wanted to make it cinematic, I'm going to use Control-H to use hide widgets. Actually, I'm not going to do that quite yet. I'm going to use Goody's camera. Now, at some point, I would like it so that Goody's camera is integrated with Creator's Kit so that it works well together. But for now, we're just going to make it so that we have a really basic scene set up. I'm going to be guessing just a little bit. Let's add a keyframe here, and then we'll end over here. And this will probably be, I don't know, 10,000. I'm not going into detail into how to use this plugin because that's really not quite the tutorial for that. Let's just try and make it nice and cinematic for us. Okay, all playing together. Hopefully the camera starts moving. Beautiful. Okay, camera's a little bit quick there. Let's try reset that. Again, hope is to eventually have this a little more of a well-oiled process eventually, which will require just a bit of coordination between us two at some point. All right, picking up sandwiches. Turns into threatening mode. Camera moves around. Okay. I know this is not a super serious scene, but you know this has to be cleaned up. You know, it can't stay like that forever. Let's just give it even a little bit more leeway. Yep, I think that's oh boy. That's not quite what I was looking for. But I think that's good enough. Yeah, I think that'll do it. Okay. Well, that ends this part of the tutorial. That is how you program in Creator's Kit using the new 2.0 update. I will see you shortly for the next tutorial.